All right, so the first Christmas after I got married, I was invited to the annual Christmas party at my wife's grandmother's house. And this is a big deal. This is kind of my introduction to the family, and it was my opportunity to kind of meet all of the folks that I hadn't met yet. So as I come through the door, my grandmother meets me at the door, and I kind of feel a hush come over the room, and she says to me, "Josh, are you still beating your wife?" So I've thought for years about this story and thought about how to answer that problem, that question correctly. And really, the more I thought about it, the more I realized there's no good way to answer that question. Because no matter what you say in response to that question, you're still a rat, right? So in rhetorical terms, what she did was to frame the debate, right? In rhetoric, that's called agenda setting. That's the name for it. And in software, we also have a name for how we frame the debate, and that's called product requirements. Okay? So requirements are how we traditionally frame the work of our teams. The issue is requirements are solution statements, okay? And they have the property that they often make it very difficult to actually create a good answer to the question. So for example, a requirement for this screen might be, make it easy for people to send meeting requests. The assumed problem here is that people have a hard time making meetings. But what if the problem is different? What if the problem is that meetings actually suck, right? And what people need is a way to be productive without going to meetings, okay? In that case, you've got a very different problem statement. The problem is, how can you be productive without going to a meeting, okay? So what startups need is a way to engage with the problem, not just the solution, okay? And that's because we're operating in an environment of what Eric Ries calls an environment of extreme uncertainty. You need a way to be able to test your assumptions about both the problem and the solution. And a hypothesis is the answer to that need. Okay? A hypothesis is simply a way to frame the problem in a way that makes it easy to test. So let's look at what a hypothesis looks like. This is one way to express it. Person of type A has a problem of type B, and we're going to look for a signal of C in the market so that we'll know if we're right or wrong. Okay? A good hypothesis has two parts. It has the assumption that you want to test, right? What's the statement that we're going to look for to see if it's right or wrong? And it has the test itself. What are the conditions that we'll try to observe to know if it's right or wrong? Okay? So let's look at an example from the meeting space. So in the first case, the hypothesis is we believe employees have a need for an easier way to set up a meeting. And what we'll look for to know if we're right is that they set up meetings easily and they set up lots of meetings, and guess what? Productivity increases, okay? But, so we build a little tool, we put it in the market, and people make lots of meetings, and guess what? Productivity magically doesn't increase. Productivity goes through the floor. So that's our opportunity to reformulate and to go back and say, we need a new hypothesis. And the hypothesis might be what I said earlier, which is that employees have a need for a way to be productive without going to meetings, okay? And then we're looking for different signals coming out of our solution. We're looking for people who are being productive without going to meetings. Okay? So why does this work? It works because hypotheses express assumptions. You can think of every decision that you make as an assumption until you've been able to test it. Right? So you might as well express your decisions in a way that makes them easy to test. Okay? If you think that's not important, ask this question to yourself. What assumptions do I have today about my customers that, if proven false, will cause me to fail? This is why hypotheses are important. Okay? The other thing that hypotheses do is they help you organize your team into a team of creators. You take your hypotheses and tests, you put them up on the wall, you've got your hypothesis backlog. You've got your work queue for your team, right? This is a great way to organize cross-functional teams. Of course, there are other ways to organize teams, right? Requirements are a great way to organize the work of teams when you're trying to do production to a known standard. But that's not the business of startups. The business of startups is to find a problem and then find the solution to that problem, okay? So to sum up, hypotheses, good for startups. Requirements, bad for startups, okay? And people sometimes say to me, Josh, isn't this just a trick of language? Like, what does it matter when you call them, what you call them? And I say, for you, I have a question for you. And that is, are you still beating your wife? Thanks very much.